Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying Managing Editor Live 2021. I'm here with Lyanne Alfaro, and we're talking about how to reimagine stories that you tell on social media. And thank you, Lyanne, for joining us. I really appreciate it. Lyanne and I work together at CNBC Digital, and now Lyanne is supervising producer and social media content director at NASDAQ. She's an award-winning journalist. She is passionate about exploring the Latino influence on the world of business. And at NASDAQ, she tells stories about the future of market technology and business. And I'm just really excited for you to join us. In this session, we're going to be talking about how to sharpen your approach to audience engagement, strategy, and execution for social media. We'll learn social media best practices, find out the biggest mistakes that brands make when it comes to social media, and explore the future of social media. And so, Lyanne, I'm really curious, I learned a lot from you, at CNBC, we had a social media team and you were always giving talks to the reporters about social media. And I'm curious, what drew you to social media? How did you get into social?
Well, Tom, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure to be here, and so excited to talk about the opportunities that social media presents, because at the end of the day, not only is it a tool to complete that end of having a social media presence, but it enables connection, it enables community, and so many different other tools. And that's what I find most fascinating about it. I must say, I studied journalism, and so I did do reporting for some time, but I did fall into social media, and I think I stayed in social media because there is so much opportunity. That's why I came to social media to the first place. There were reporting opportunities, but there was so much opportunity within social media to do a variety of things. So I was most a writer through social media. You could do more video. As you know, at CNBC, we did a lot of live coverage with our on-air reporters through social media. So it's kind of connecting the dots there. And also, at NASDAQ, in my capacity here, also have delved into audio. And so kind of diversifying your toolkit and ways that you communicate with people, I think, is one of the unexpected opportunities that social media presents, making it far more than just text and more touch points for people to connect with you as a person or a brand.
All right. And how would you describe your or NASDAQ's approach to social media?
Yeah, so NASDAQ's approach to social media, I would say it's definitely has changed so much, first of all, in the last 2 years. And that's because I work for the very strategic partner who also has experience building out something of this capacity in other brands. I work with Kelsey Murray. She's global head of social media. And so I've taken charge a lot on these multimedia assets that I just spoke about. But Kelsey has really experience in building out a full program when it comes to social media. So no longer are we just talking about one vertical. Here are the posts that we're going to do today, and tomorrow we're going to do the exact same schedule, or Tuesdays and Thursdays we'll have the same schedule, Wednesdays and Fridays we'll have the same. It's more so about, let's get a read on what is being said on the ground while executing our own brand calendar based on all of our business units and their priorities. So it's direct impact to the business. It's no longer social media on just its own free agent or just pushing out all the publications. It's more so collecting all of the priorities of all the business units, bringing them into the fold, laying out the calendar, and then operating on that like it's our holy Bible. So across the way, of course, we come across unexpected opportunities, but it leads to a strategy that is much more binding because it relates directly to our end goals as a business.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, it's something that we talk a lot about at Managing Editor is that, when you're building out a social calendar, the temptation is to do exactly what you said. It's like, we're going to tweet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we're going to do LinkedIn on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Could you talk a little bit about how, NASDAQ is a big organization. How do you build all those business priorities into the social media calendar?
So I would say that this is why being part of social media is so interesting and fascinating, especially at a place like NASDAQ, where we're a medium-sized but global company, and the hierarchy is less bureaucratic than in other spaces that I've been in. Certainly for its size, you would expect much more. Our social team to have to go through so much more compliance, legal, and surprisingly enough, there is still room to not have to do that. And I do think that that works in our favor, because that means we can work a little bit more nimbly and a little quicker, especially when there's news related to NASDAQ. We can act on that in real time. And I think that changes the game a lot. But to your question, in terms of NASDAQ on social media, I do think that we, first of all, have to lay out a map of all the stakeholders, of everyone at the company, and say, who are the leaders of each business unit? So we start operating a little bit less like, oh, we're on social, we're people on social, or we're a company on social, and more so like a business. We say, okay, we identify all the stakeholders, we meet with them, we have conversations, we form relationships with them, and then each of these business units have a person who works within marketing that then we can speak to about social media. Because while their expertise may not be social media, they know the key terms, they know the words that they're using to market. And so then we can work with them on crafting what is the messaging and what is the medium that will best resonate with their social audience. So again, it goes back to strategy. And I think that in social media, it's really easy to get caught up in the wind of new trends, especially when you see something that looks fun that everyone's doing online. And the tendency can be, especially from people on the outside looking in, to say, oh, well, so-and-so is doing that, you should go do that too. And that can be really dangerous really quickly, because as we know, social media teams tend to get spread thin. There's been a lot of cases where I've sat on teams where there's one or two people running the show. And so to that, you need to set parameters and guidelines so that not only you understand your direction, but everyone around you does. And it builds a sense of strategy for everyone around you. And it also helps you establish your boundaries so that you can focus on something and you ultimately have a better product.
Could you give an example? I love this approach, by the way. Can you give an example of over the past year where you felt like that strategy really worked?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we laid out our brand social calendar about a year and a half ago, because we decided it needed a makeover. There were new leaders in different business units. There were shifting priorities, and so we laid it out kind of like a map. And one of the things that we decided that was going to be very important to us was going to be our ERGs, making our content a little bit more people focused. So yes, we're talking about the market technology that we release. Yes, we're talking about the tech trends report. We drop a new tech trends report at the top of each year. And that, by the way, is also an amazing effort. But I want to talk about people, because that has been such a big campaign. Like, a lot of people were really engaged. So for Black History Month, that was one of the things that we decided we are going to connect with all of the stakeholders for Black History Month. And because of recent events that happened in the last year, and the corporate leaning into the world of the Black community and trying to connect with them, and NASDAQ being one of these corporates, we realized that Black History Month was going to be a huge month. So because we had this calendar laid out a year and a half, we connected with our ERG, yes, which is called Globe. And so they had a series of events with different thought leaders, in tech, in business, who also were a part of the Black community, but also about mental health and health at large, and Black women's health, and what happens when Black women are losing jobs. There were economic discussions, policy discussions, health discussions. We were able to build out a robust plan that not only sat on social, but also lived on digital. We built out a digital landing page for Black History Month that featured the faces of our ERG, but also how we're connecting with the community and kind of walking across interdisciplinary lines. So not only talking about the Black community at large, but the intersection with technology and why that's important. This campaign, I think, performed really well, in part because of the timing, but because we had the runway to plan for it, and we planned months in advance. We connected all of these dots, even external partners as well. That's why I think it performed as well as it did, and it really resonated. And I think it also spoke to us about the increasing importance to feature people. yes, we're creating all this technology, but people continue to be what social media was built for. Social media is about people connecting to people. I think sometimes we think when we get too in the, when we're talking to people that are in the product, it makes sense that, we want to connect people to product, right? And that's why you ask questions like, what's the purpose of the social media campaign, right? You're going to have a different campaign if your purpose is lead gen versus it's something else. It's like a specific niche product that you're trying to market to people. So I think this is why it's important to define what your end goal is. And for us, the end goal was really having people learn more about NASDAQ, but clearly it had a deep impact, and people connecting to people really has worked for our strategy.
Oh, that's great. You take such a such a thoughtful approach to planning social media. Could you talk a little bit about the measurement of that? Like, how do you measure impact on the team?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do use Sprinkler, if anyone's familiar with the tools, to measure our reports, and we do deliver the report back to all the business units. So I mentioned earlier that developing a good social media strategy is about identifying all of your stakeholders across the company, and these are the very people that are the ones that receive these reports. So for example, Black History Month, we made sure that for all of our stakeholders, they received a report that includes our benchmark. And benchmarks are determined by comparable campaigns. So we're not going to go and compare a Black History Month campaign to a product launch campaign, because the two are not equivalent. We're going to compare it to another ERG event, or to a Black History Month event from last year. So we make sure we set our benchmarks in terms of engagement, I would say, is the leading one. Reach is pretty important, but reach is also, it's more like sowing or reaping from what you sow, right? So your reach will probably be bigger if you establish relationships with people. Something that we've turned to and are much better at than we were before was developing relationships with people with bigger followings to amplify when it makes sense. So for example, say we're doing a thread about a conference that we attended with an alliance of ours. Hispanic Heritage Month just happened. Say we're doing something with a big organization, the Hispanic Star. It's a national organization. We're of course going to touch base with them and say, hey, can you please make sure you retweet this to amplify the reach? So the reach is not really eye-opening, I would say. Like, it's important, but it's a direct product of how you foster relationships with people. If you ensure that you're strategic and you make sure that these people share out your content, then you're going to get a higher reach. But what we really care about is engagement. Are people liking, but more importantly, are people commenting? Do you see activity of people sharing it? Shares are really important. And that's how we know that things are resonating with our audience.
All right. So let's get into some of the social media best practices. And what advice would you give brands that are sort of struggling to gain traction on social media?
Yeah. I would say from a top level perspective, I think it always depends on this. It partially depends on the size of your company, because that means you may need more work to build out your strategy if you have a bigger company, because you probably have more stakeholders to touch base with if things aren't resonating. But say we're working with a medium-sized company and you've met with all your stakeholders, you need to identify from your leadership, ideally comms or your CMO, someone doing strategy for your company. What are the main goals? What are the top line goals for the organization? Because based on that, you can better define what the goals are for social. At the end of the day, if you don't have a North Star, it's difficult to build a strategy. You need to define what your goals are, and you need to make sure that they are not competing with each other, because we've had that issue in the past as well. NASDAQ has several businesses fold into NASDAQ, the stock exchange. We have a listings business, we have market technology, we have ESG, corporate governance. So you need to make sure that all of these business units are not competing with each other in your social strategy. That will be cohesive to you, that will be cohesive to your audience. So best practice number one, define your goals, because that will be your North Star, and it will help you, get out of more complicated discussions, get out like a clear distilled image of what your social media strategy should look like. Other social media best practice, because I've been doing quite a bit of multimedia, you need to make sure that your images and your videos are cut for each platform and that they are meant for it. Not all text, not all announcements are meant for every platform. I think some people like to spray and pray. I'm more of the thinking that we need to target. And I do think that this kind of strategy requires more people. So if it requires more people, you also need to think through your headcount. I think this is where a lot of companies could use some help. A lot of us are stretched thin, and it's really hard to do strategy well when you're under the headcount that you should have. So you need to pick your goal, pick your areas of focus. If you are in a tight bandwidth, say, maybe I'm not going to do all the social platforms. Maybe I'm going to focus on LinkedIn and Twitter because I know that's where I'll get the biggest payout. So you either need the head count or you need to focus on your verticals. And then you need to make sure that the content is fit for it. So not only technically, make sure you look up your dimensions. A lot of people post the same graphic everywhere. You need to make sure that the dimensions are right, especially with video. That's super important. And the subtitling, make sure your multimedia looks fit to print. And then figure out, did I check all the goals that I established at the top of the funnel? Did I meet all those goals? Is that all lining up to the business at large, no matter what BU you're working with?
Could you talk a little bit about how NASDAQ structures the social team? Or are you by vertical, or tell me a little bit about the NASDAQ social team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many different ways to do this, right? And while I've sat on the NASDAQ social team, we've been restructured many, many times. But I think right now, NASDAQ is arriving at a really good place with our social team. We, for a long time, were 2 people. So I can definitely speak to being stretched. I've been there and have recently grown to 6 people. So we have a core social team, which pretty much serves as, I would say, collaborators to all of the business units and stakeholders across the company. So we have the global head of social, Kelsey Murray. I sit under Kelsey Murray running multimedia, but also brand campaigns. I do full rollouts for that. So I'm a bit of a hybrid role because I've worn every hat. And ideally in the future, we might even expand that further. We also have a writer and analytics person. We have a person focusing on paid specifically because we realized that this was a big area of growth, especially for so many of our marketers that want to reach specific audiences. We have someone focusing on 2 people focusing on listing social, because we found that a specific need for NASDAQ based on our business goals was serving our listed clients. And it was taking up a lot of our time and not giving us the ability to focus on the rest of the business that is NASDAQ. However, it is one of the very, people facing parts of NASDAQ. We have so many public facing companies. We've had in the last year in our offices, we had Mary J. Blige, right? Like, we obviously need to have these people on social. We need to have these IPOs on social media, but we realize that this is a high capacity job. So we have 2 people focused on that. However, everyone else on the team works with all the other business units equally to make sure that we get their content out in a way that's fit to print. We just also hired a influencer person. So because we expect to be doing more work with influencers in the next year and build out an entire program with that. Super exciting. And as you may have noticed, Instagram and TikTok are big for that. So we do expect to be working with her in that capacity to get into the communities that the business wants to get into in the coming year.
Oh, that's fascinating. You mentioned some of your, you mentioned Sprinkler, but do you have any favorite tools or tips when it comes to social media production?
Yes. So I think it depends on how big your team is. For our creative, we do work with our design team that designs the creative for us. I also have an independent brand though, and I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with the usability of Canva and the user friendliness. I love Canva. Sprinkler is good for measuring as a measuring tool, and I really do like it. If you ever have to shoot things on the ground, I think InShot is a very good app. In terms of audiograms, if you ever have audible content, you want to make sure you pull in people, and static graphics sometimes just don't cut it. You might want to consider a video with a graphic and subtitles on it, and Wave. It's not wave.com, but it's called wave.co. Wave.co is really good for that. WAVVE. Those are kind of the top line tools, I would say. I think videos, we usually try to produce them in Premiere, and then download over. And I think that we've gone from like producing on the ground on our phones to more polished, because that's kind of what we decided our strategy required, moving to a more polished look. So we produce a lot on the computer.
Great. And can you talk, you mentioned your independent brand. Can you talk about how that works with NASDAQ Social, and how you make that? Because one of the things I mean, you've been doing this for a long, your independent brand, like you've been doing it for a long time. Could you sort of talk how that's helped you, and how that works with your employer? I find it fascinating.
Yeah. So I have a like Latinos and Money platform, since I do come from a journalist background, and I always became interested really in covering highlights from the Latino and money world. So I developed a newsletter and a podcast. By the time that I came onto NASDAQ full time, this was garnering some attention. It's never been huge, but lately it's been garnering more attention. And I did have a conversation with my employer just to make sure that we didn't have any conflicts, because I do still freelance as a personality, I suppose, to talk about Latinos and money. And I do speaking circuits and that kind of stuff, but also like I have a podcast. So we were able to come to an agreement. So I would say if you ever have a brand like that, definitely discuss with your employer to make sure there are no conflicts of interest. But I run everything soup to nuts at the moment. I learned how to edit podcasts because of it. I do my own graphics. I do my social media plan. And it's not as high of an influx as NASDAQ is, because it is tough to juggle. But I do think there's been a rise of people who have found refuge in things that they're really passionate about. And I think social media is a great tool to connect, as I said, connecting people, connecting with other people who have similar and different ideologies to learn from them. And then just uplift the community that you want to focus on.
Absolutely. And we didn't. What's the name of the podcast so people can find it? Yeah,
sure. Yes, yeah. It's called Moneda Moves. MONEDA. Moneda Moves. I can type it into the chat. And it's you asked about how it works with my employer. I didn't make it to really necessarily bring it into NASDAQ. As a matter of fact, I didn't want NASDAQ necessarily to promote it at first, because I didn't want it to feel like what's the word? Too self-promotional, right? Like I didn't, but because of everything that has happened and the more attention to people of color creators that has come in the last year, I've embraced it a little bit more. And so certainly we've discussed opportunities to work together, because clearly NASDAQ also cares about financial literacy, which my podcast and my platform touches on. And it's a big issue among the Latino community. So this morning I did host a conference that brought together all these leaders in venture capital and entrepreneurship and personal finance. And so that's been a really great opportunity and just interest, where I've learned things independently that then I'm able to bring more to NASDAQ, bring more to the table. And similarly, I'm sure that people see my platform and they associate me with NASDAQ. So that kind of works symbiotically. But as mentioned, it's always good to have a conversation with your employer so that it's out in the open and you don't have to worry about, what if they see this on social media.
Excellent. And where do you find your source of inspiration? Because you produce a lot of content. Could you talk a little bit about your creative process?
Yeah, I would say my creative process is, it comes from reading, really. I think it comes from other people. I remember reading like that art is really all just like it's a modification of somebody else's art. And I think that it really applies to whenever you're creating something, because it is emotionally, it's an emotional investment. You're invested in it personally. It's no longer, I'm doing this even in slightest for compensation. It's more so I'm doing this because I feel strongly about it. And so feeding your mind and, and your emotions, I'm sure to a certain degree, with new information from other creatives, from other reports, I think is always a good thing. And that's where my inspiration lies. I love connecting the dots whenever I'm reading from different people and different companies as well.
Excellent. And so let's talk about the future of social media. And I know that or at least clients that we've worked with, and when you talk about social media, you're always sort of focused on the next big thing. And so is it TikTok, which by the way, I love TikTok because I didn't know that I like sea shanties, or that I really enjoyed watching videos of monkeys opening Amazon packages. I did not know that until I joined TikTok. I love the platform, but how is your approach to emerging platforms, and how do you think about the future of social media?
Yes, so TikTok I think is already big. I think it's already here. That said, I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the platform as it enters more of a mainstream era, which I think has begun. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It just means that it's a different era of the platform. If we think about any social media platform, it has its infancy stage. So think back, if you can remember YouTube in its first couple of years, you had all these YouTube vloggers just carrying the camera around, talking camera to face. And making all sorts of interesting series, right? Like you had, I remember I used to watch a vlogger where she was sharing, it was really a reality TV show. We just didn't know it. And so you had all this quirky, interesting content until things got formalized. Then you built in paid sponsorships, you had ads, you had the introduction of the monetization of the product, which ultimately led to now we have higher quality content. It's much more searchable because there's just a wealth more of content. I think TikTok we're going to see go through a similar evolution. If not, it's already begun. I was personally also on TikTok at the top of this year, and I can tell you it's very different now than it was then. And I think it will continue to change because also the algorithm changes. That's the other thing. So you used to be able to get this meteoric growth because the For You page would bring you videos from people that you don't follow at a very high rate. And now that rate has slightly decreased. And so it means more about fostering your community and the followers that you have. You see more ads, you see more higher quality. By higher quality, I mean like higher definition, better camera shot content. And so I think TikTok is already big, but I think what's next is really audio. And we did have Mark Cuban in one of our podcasts that we did at NASDAQ talking about this, and he kind of bet on the same thing too. We want to know what the next platform will be for social media and audio. We have a few contenders, of course. We saw Clubhouse. We saw Twitter get into Spaces, potentially Facebook trying to do the same thing, but we don't really have like a definitive platform that's really been the catch-all. So it's interesting to think about how that might take place. But the other thing that Mark Cuban said was that audio may come to us in a very cinematic experience, and that could be what's next. So I'm curious about what platform will break through and create that for us.
Excellent. Well, I just want to leave a moment open for questions. If not, I have one more question. Are there, just waiting for the audience. So my question to you is that where you're seeing the growth in next year is in audio social? Is that what you're keeping an eye on?
I think that's the next platform, but I wouldn't say that put all your eggs in that basket. I think video is still king. And so making your video for TikTok, for YouTube Shorts, for LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever your audience is, find your audience or find the content that lives on these platforms to deliver to your audience.
Excellent. Well, Lyanne, thank you so much for everything. This is a great talk, and have a great day.
Thank you, Tom.